Forbes under 30, 11.5 million US turnover this year. Most don't even accomplish that in a lifetime.
Who are you going to take advice from? Our returns rate is very low. You went, it's too low. I went, too low? What do you mean too low?
I'd have had the same mindset as you, like, it's really low, we must be doing something right.
But actually, I think that is totally incorrect. You need skin in the game to really care about something, don't you? Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
You're working your way up that ladder and then you hit a snake and it's like, no, you don't quite deserve it yet, and you back down.
Well, what do you tell someone when you want to make them want it even more? We've got to tell them no. And she's like, what?
They're never really a failure as long as you actually learn from it and you keep going.
It takes 10 years to build something incredible. Worked out quite well.
That's brilliant, all fun and games. Welcome back to another episode of the TheoClarkePodcast, where I interview e-commerce entrepreneurs. Today's podcast is sponsored by Commercive Fulfillment, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Jack Zambakides. How are you, brother?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to just introduce you, Jack, for everyone, as the co-founder of D.Louise, the fastest growing female jewellery brand in the UK. So, Jack, what a place to begin.
Thank
and
you.
I'd love to know how it all started and where you got the ball rolling.
Yeah, of course. So the brand is 3.5 years old now. It's founded with myself and my girlfriend, Olivia. She's definitely more of the face of the brand, so you won't see me plastered all over the Instagram, which is probably a good thing for everyone. But it started out of lockdown. I think it was September 2020. So we're all in lockdown. E-commerce was obviously booming. I was running another business at the time and we started putting some money into Facebook ads that year, and obviously did pretty well because everyone was at home, everyone was shopping. So it was literally a case of Facebook at the time. I'm sure you were probably running ads, but you could put £1 in and get 3, 4, 5 back. My girlfriend Olivia was in a job at the time, which she loved before lockdown. But as lockdown came, all of the benefits, so she was very much like going out and meeting clients, very social. All of that was taken away, put on furlough, and she definitely lost a bit of purpose. And I said to her, look, you need to stop complaining and you need to start taking some action. And she was like, well, what am I going to do? I said, well, you need to start a business. She's always been obsessed with jewelry. I would always buy her different brands of jewelry for her birthday. She used to work in Pandora, and I was like, well, you need to start a jewelry brand. She loved the idea because she loved, I could design my own pieces. I could do this and that. In my head, I'm thinking it's easy to ship, high gross margins. Like I know women are probably easier to market to than men particularly. So we sort of paired up our partnership there with my sort of fascination with an obsession with like business and e-commerce, and then her love for jewelry, and that's sort of how it all started.
That's amazing. It's really nice to see a couple in business together.
Yeah.
Ecom, like having been there and done it, I didn't grow my brand or business anywhere near to the size that you did, so I can only imagine. But when I also started that business in lockdown, it was quite a lonely game, like just doing it from my bedroom at home. So it's nice to have someone to do it with, and what better than, you know, your partner as well. And nice that you kind of encouraged her to do that, and look at where you are now. Yeah, I think I'm going to drop it in there for everyone. You were on Forbes under 30 for e-commerce retail. And expected to do 11.5 million US turnover this year. So how are we looking on that target?
Yeah, we'll be okay.
Amazing.
We'll be okay.
Amazing. So you've started the band in lockdown 3 years ago, and now you're projected to do 11.5 million US this year. So that's one hell of a journey in 3 years. I think most don't even accomplish that in a lifetime. So to be achieving that within 3 years is just fantastic. You mentioned you initially started in lockdown. What was that first process like ordering the first bit of stock and getting the ball rolling? Do you remember?
Yeah, I've actually got a good story here. So obviously we decided that we wanted to start the brand. The brand's actually named after Liv's mum, who sadly passed away from cancer in 2017. So it's called D.Louise, and her name was Deborah Louise Jenkins. And I said, look, we came up, you know, when you're trying to brainstorm around names, I said, look, we can call it D.Louise, but just so you know, like I'm all in on this because I refuse to let something fail if it's going to have your mum's name to it. So it's a nice way that it keeps us accountable. But obviously go through that process, which I'd been through before, of ordering samples, trying to find suppliers. At the time, I'd never been to China, and obviously it was hard to travel, so we couldn't meet these people face to face. But I understand how the whole process worked in terms of product sourcing. We get the samples, we do a shoot, you do all the normal things when you're trying to launch a brand. Liv puts things on Instagram, we're trying to get who can wear it. And obviously in hindsight, you look back at the first shoot and they look awful. But we put the website live, and obviously almost step one is, right, we need to get some traffic. So we start running ads. And like I said, I sort of, that was probably one of our competitive advantages that what I'd like to think a very good understanding of how to run ads and how to market in that way. We start running ads. Our average product was probably at £30-40, and I was setting a £100 a day budget. And first day, no. Second day, third day, still no acquisitions. You're obviously getting traffic on the site, but no one buying. I'm like, fuck. Liv's asking me, how's everything going? And I'm going, yeah, it's all going how it should. It's just learning. But it took about £700-800 for us to get our first acquisition at a £30 AOV. But I always laugh because it's like people, especially in like, it's known now in like drop shipping and testing products, like it's not profitable, but it's like I knew at that point, if we can get one customer, we can get two, we can get three. We obviously were losing a huge amount of money on first order. But obviously you have then something to work with. So it was definitely a slow start, but I think all businesses are.
It's that nerve-wracking moment, isn't it? Setting the account live, seeing the budget being spent and thinking, something needs to come through, especially once you bought the stock and things like that. So I can only imagine how it felt, especially with, Olivia at the time asking how it's going. You're like, yeah, all good. Like, don't worry. Little did she know what was being spent and things like that.
No, exactly, yeah. So the first few months are obviously rocky, but you're buying data at the end of the day. That's what you're buying. So you're learning what the customer wants. Obviously, everything takes time to optimize. You're seeing what pieces are people buying, and then it's just a refining process.
100%. I think data is key, and I know you're big on kind of understanding your ICP and kind of who you're talking to. And I watched your recent interview, or where you were on the panel in Dubai at the Retailer Summit, and you were speaking about acquiring data and being very big on kind of post-purchase acquisition, sending emails to customers to understand how they found the brand and things like that. So you are right. I think data acquisition is huge, and then just making sure that you actually leverage that to your advantage as well.
No, 100%. And it's definitely difficult. We're trying to build more, we've definitely, in 2024, we've tried to engage with the customer more face-to-face, because it's like all these things. Like, we could do this podcast over Zoom, but it's not going to be as good as it. You need to be face-to-face. Zoom's good, but it's not good enough. And it's the exact same with, say, if you're speaking with customers. So we like to try engage with the customer. So it's, when we're doing an event, you need to see what do they wear and how do they act and why do they like the product. And surveys are good, but they're not great. And if you just spend that time meeting your customers face to face, it's definitely hugely valuable.
Yeah, I think you miss a lot being behind a screen.
Massively, yeah.
Like, yes, you have access to data and numbers, and you can do a lot with that, but you forget that we are human at the end of the day. And if we're marketing to humans, you need to really understand the exact person that you're marketing to, which comes back to the ICP. And yes, you can rely on the numbers, which will tell you a lot about the sales funnel, or where the drop-off points are, or maybe what's working and what isn't. But you're still missing that piece of like, who is my ICP? Like, who are they? What do they wear? Like you said, what events do they go to? And then how can I build the product that is going to be perfect for them, or market to that individual?
No, 100%.
So how do you do that then? Like, I know it's a bit of a long-winded question, but how do you further refine the product to truly match your ICP, or the marketing of the product? Yeah,
no, it's interesting. So where my biggest downfall, so my previous business was in personal shopping. So I built up a business called LS Personal Shopper, which I exited in started stepping away about 2 years ago. And I've never been obsessed with the product. I've never been a product guy. I've more been like the business guy, the marketing guy. So it's something I'd always struggled with. That business like model complemented me, because people already wanted the product. So people already wanted the Dior trainers or the t-shirt. All I had to do was supply it. I knew that when starting, say, an e-commerce business, I was never obsessed with, say, a clothing brand. I wasn't obsessed with how you stitch it, or I wasn't obsessed with enough to be able to go through all the hurdles which you have to go through, because you're constantly getting bad samples. So I knew, having Olivia as being obsessed with the product, but the benefit we have is she is the target market. And you're seeing a lot of brands do this well, where they are the market. So they know that if they can design into what they like, there's a huge market out there who are very similar to them. Obviously, what some brands are doing even better now, the obvious example is Represent Clothing, is they're building such a strong personal brand that they can then manipulate if suddenly everyone's into fitness now, and George has built 247 in such an incredible way. But previously, if his passion went into something else and he started designing clothes around that, people would follow. So it's very interesting how people are using that to their advantage. It was something we're trying to do and trying to understand, but ultimately Olivia is the target market. And I think she's influenced like how we all are in many different ways, but I think ultimately we can pinpoint that very well, because we have a joke in the office, but the team of girls we need board approval for new pieces. It's basically saying that they're all similar to our target demographic. They all have to like it for us to then release it. And we know, like, we're very confident where, if you see something and you can see it and you can feel it, like, we know our customer's going to like it. So it takes time to develop, but early on you haven't got a clue. We weren't smart enough to then understand we want to really sell to this market. So, but I know other brands have done that very well.
Yeah, for sure. I think Represent is a really good example. I have a question off the back of what you said. Like, even if you are the person that you're marketing to, or you fit your ICP, or not you, but Olivia, what if her perception on what she likes changes? Yeah. How do you then keep your ideas current with what the market wants, or maybe versus what you want to do as a brand owner that's maybe slightly different to what's in the market currently?
Yeah, no, that's also an interesting point. And you see brands, say, a very big jewelry brand comes to mind, and they were founder led. The brand's named after her, and she's probably in her 40s, 50s, 60s now. But it was started, in early 2000s. So they've had 24 years, 25 years. And you've seen, you get to that, say, awkward position where it's like, say, if you build your brand in your 20s, do we want to keep targeting that demographic, or do we want to keep the same demographic and age with them? It's something I think about a lot, but I think our mindset is that we will. So as Olivia gets older and understands, I think we'll try keep age with that demographic. Obviously, it gets to the point where, unfortunately, you're probably either too old to buy jewelry, you're not interested. But I think that will be our play. As opposed to, I know some brands say we only want to target 18 to 21-year-olds, but at that point, you're constantly 18 to 21-year-olds. When I was 18, it's very different to how 18-year-olds are now. So you're constantly having to move with the times a bit more. I think it's a bit of an easier model, but I think we're thinking 5, 10, maybe 15-year problems.
Yeah. And I wonder if, well, you know better than me, does jewelry kind of fall into the same market as fashion, in that it just evolves very, very quickly and changes quick, or do you see a bit more stability in jewelry?
Yeah, jewelry is interesting. So if you look at it from its basic principles, people have been wearing jewelry, even like the Egyptians. So they would wear, I know it's a crazy example, but they would be covered in gold, and it's a way to show wealth or authority. But what happened in the market is, our parents' generation, typically the male would buy the female jewelry for birthdays, for Christmas. So if you spoke to a woman in her 50s, 60s, 70s, typically the jewelry she wears was bought to her as a gift. So she wouldn't go in power. She wouldn't go into Cartier or Tiffany and buy that product themselves. And typically it would be fine metals. So it'd be the golds, the silvers, the platinum, stuff like that. What then happened, I would say 10 to 15 years ago, particularly with eCommerce, definitely made it move a lot faster, was that they're called demi-fine jewelry brands. So that's like brands similar to like Monica Vinader, or brands similar to that, where they're plating jewelry. So you can get that gold look, but it's not solid gold. Where we came in is we're almost like a price-wise, we're definitely fraction below theirs, but ours is plated in we plate PVD plating on stainless steel. Stainless steel is a very hard metal. It's what, say, a Rolex watch is made out of, but it's also what your cutlery is made out of, your kitchen sink. So it's very tough. It's not marketed as well as obviously like a gold, but obviously you got the gold plating, but with stainless steel, it will never tarnish, never fade, which is where this is the next wave. You're seeing a lot of brands are pivoting into stainless steel jewelry. The downside is the metal is very tough, so you can't do every single design with it because you can't mold it in the same way. So these are all things I'm trying to learn as much as I can, and we go visit our suppliers very often. But it's interesting how the market's moving. But what's happened with jewelry, we've just had the Olympics, Wimbledon is, even if you go into a Nike store now, people are wearing that athleisure, the Aloes, the Lululemons. People are still wearing jewelry with that look. So when we speak with our customers, it's like, why do you like the brand? Blah, blah, blah. And one of the main reasons is they never have to take it off. And it's almost like, when a girl might not feel as confident when they haven't got makeup or they haven't got a certain look, when they have their jewelry, they feel more confident. And knowing the fact that they can wear it to the gym or they can wear it in the shower, not constantly don't have to take it off, it sort of makes them feel more of who the person they want to be. So it's interesting how the markets move, but we're definitely trying to be at the forefront of that waterproof and that hopefully trend, which does seem, but I'm sure you look on Google Trends at stuff all the time, seeing trend search terms, and waterproof jewelry is growing very fast. So trying to lead that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed that that's one of your, well, I would say a USP. You have a lifetime warranty, right, against the color discoloring or tarnishing and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. So that's something we're really trying to push towards. We're not trying to win the price of we want to be the cheapest. We definitely do want to be the best. So in terms of product quality, in terms of customer service, that's really at the forefront of our strategy, and we're very open about that. So we pride ourselves on product quality and customer service because we're trying to build a brand which will be here in 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah. I think pricing is really, really important as well. I'd be interested to know what your thought process has been on that and how you adjust your pricing as well, because perception is also very, very important. So it's like finding that sweet spot between profit margin, but also fitting in with what your competitors are doing. It's tough, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I think pricing for any e-commerce brand, when we first started the brand, we were definitely at a lower price point than what we are now, when we have gradually tried to raise our price point. But where we want to be, what's in our mission statement, is to remain accessible. So it needs to be that it can be attainable by anyone in the market. So we're not trying to exclude customers, but not at a point where it would be a detriment to the quality. So if you're selling a £5 piece of jewelry and you're trying to scale a business of that, it's impossible if you want to sell something for a good quality and maintain a good margin. Yeah. So we're trying to definitely finding our feet and we try to liaise with the customer. But you're right, price perception's extremely interesting. But if you look at brands like the Louis Vuittons, the real top tier of the market, their gross margins are through the roof, and people still buy them and perceive that they're better quality.
Very, very true. It's a very interesting thing, perceived value when 100%. It comes to cost. Even with everything, like with courses or even with service-based businesses, if you come in too low compared to the competition, people will just think that either you're not as good or maybe not as confident in your delivery. But same with ecom, I guess. It's very, very interesting.
One thing just on pricing before we maybe move on is what we always try to keep in line is this product worth at least double the price which we're selling it for? So if someone was to pay £250, would they still be happy with the presentation, with the experience, with the how quickly we get it, how it actually looks and how it fits and how it lasts? If that's the question we try to answer, because then we always want to have the value needs to outweigh the monetary in exchange. If we continue to do that, we'll build goodwill and hopefully a good word of mouth.
Yeah. Running an e-commerce business comes with many different challenges, especially when it comes to order fulfillment. Late deliveries, high shipping costs, and customer complaints can negatively impact your business, potentially leading to payment processing holds that will eat into your profit margins. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to Commercive, our sponsor today. They handle everything from manufacturing to storage and shipping with no hidden fees. And their dedicated WhatsApp support team are on hand to make sure you're always taken care of. Commercive offers 5 to 10 day shipping worldwide from China, with same-day processing and USA warehousing available for brands at competitive rates. Having served over 3,000 e-commerce sellers, Commercive has earned a reputation for reliable fulfillment. It's super easy to get set up. Just click the link in the video description and visit commercive.co to get a free quote. That's really interesting. I've not heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. Because I think that's the other thing that's also important is the post-purchase, like have they made the right decision? That's something that people would obviously ask themselves. Was it worth the amount that I spent, and am I happy with the purchase? And I'd imagine if you're making sure that the quality is always, or the product is worth double what you're selling it for, it should also limit the number of returns and things like that, which I know can be big for ecom too.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'll tell it. So it's about Steve, who invested into the brand. One of our first sessions with him, we were modeling through like our current P&L for that financial year, going through, starting at the top, and he goes, okay, what was your revenue before returns? Okay, then what was your returns rate? Show him the number. And we're very proud that we have a very low returns rate, only just a few percent. And I was saying it like my chest high, or our returns rate is very low. He went, it's too low. I went, too low? What do you mean too low? Like, thought that's a good thing. They like the product. He was like, your exchange or returns process is obviously too tricky. So it's not in terms of, we didn't offer free exchanges, that's to the pay to get the thing back. So from a customer satisfaction point of view, which is what he looks at, because we had room in our P&L at the bottom, we can give some leeways, like you need to make your returns process better. It needs to be improved. And it's similar to the Amazon model, they're trying to make it as easy to buy and easy to return. But it's funny how different mindsets, because I would always try to get that number to as close to zero as possible, but it's maybe not always the right thing from the customer.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I wouldn't have looked at it. I'd have had the same mindset as you. Like, it's really low. We must be doing something right. Yeah. But you mentioned Steve, but that was Steve Hewitt, right? So he was the CEO of Gymshark, and he ended up joining your board and investing in D.Louise. So how did that happen?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting story. Steve has been in the business about a year now. And how it came about. So at the time, I was very confident that I could take the brand to probably the level we are now, say £10 million turnover. But it gets more difficult, especially when you're relying on paid acquisition, because obviously your customer acquisition cost goes up as you continue to scale. And I never understood like how these brands, particularly say Gymshark is a great example, like how are they doing? You're looking at their year-on-year growth, they go from like 100 to 200 million. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't possess the skill set to do that, and I'm not sure how they are. At the time, I was working on another business with a guy who used to work at Gymshark, and I said, like, I would constantly ask him questions. Like, I must have asked him 1,000 questions about, how do they communicate internally, or everything you can imagine. I asked, and then I said to him, right, you need to get me a meeting with someone from Gymshark, someone senior who can just explain to me or come jump into my position how I was just worried about, say, the future of the brand, how we can build this properly. And he was looking on LinkedIn. He was like, well, obviously anyone who was at Gymshark in that sort of golden period knew Steve. He was there from 4 million to 400 and a huge part of their success. And he was like, well, Steve's actually formed a advisory company called Fanau. So Steve ultimately started with 4 other employees from Gymshark. He's created an advisory company. What they ultimately do is they advise small business owners, and Steve's he gives a lot to charity. So basically a huge part of their revenue, which you pay them in fees, so they advise you, but then they give that money so you can really see where your money's going. So he told me, well, they've launched this, and I was like, right, perfect. How do we get in? I think at the time we were turning over like £4 or £5 million, and it said, are you turning over £10 million plus in the application form? Obviously just lie, say yes. Had a call with someone prior to meeting Steve, and the call went very well, and I explained, like, we're actually at this level, but I know we're going to be there soon. And then we paid the fee to have a sort of, he calls it his North Star session. But so yeah, then we met with Steve, and we worked with him on a good few sessions trying to understand the brand. He loved the brand, he loved the story, believed in the business model, and I think it was his third investment since leaving Gymshark.
I think it's worth its weight in gold doing something like that, because like you said, it's very good that you were able to identify that, you weren't maybe able to take the brand to the levels that you wanted to. I think a lot of people sometimes struggle to kind of put that ego aside.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth its weight in gold because you were able to identify that, seek help from the right person who then fell in love with the brand and is able to take you, to double, maybe even triple that this year.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, and it's something which isn't talked about well enough, is when people are, say, when you don't know how to do something, first of all, we're not trying to do something with the brand which has never been done before. So that first of all, I think it would be unrealistic to assume that someone knows, and there are multiple different ways you can get to what we would consider success, being huge growth and getting to where we want to get to. But then there also needs to be a weight on who are you going to take advice from, because you see people, they'll go to the whole market and they'll ask their dad, they'll ask their grand, people who've got no experience. So then they almost weight all of their opinions evenly. Yeah. When actually I think that is totally incorrect. So what my theory was, and it still is like, well, who can I find who's, say, been on that journey? And Steve had obviously been there. He's got a huge amount of experience. Like, we needed some grey hairs. Like, what are the battle scars he's had, which we can try avoid? And obviously it gives you a whole new perspective on that. Returns is just one thing, but on a million different things. And then once I sort of found that Steve maybe potentially was that person, it's also then gets important, like, can you communicate well with them? Like, do you enjoy spending time with them? Fortunately did. Steve's an absolute incredible guy, and he's done incredible things with the business. And then obviously it seemed like a right fit. A funny story at the time is I had a feeling he was going to invest, or at least offer to invest. We weren't looking for capital. Fortunately, we've been profitable since starting the brand. And I said to Liv, so I think in this meeting he's going to say he wants to invest into D.Louise. I just got the impression he was sort of digging under the bonnet with stuff and setting us up, whatever. And I said, so what are we going to say? And we both decided previously, like, it probably seemed like a good idea, give away a very small amount of equity. And she was like, yes. And I was like, well, what do you tell someone when you want to make them want it even more? And then she's like, what? And I was like, we've got to tell him no. And she's like, what? So obviously the meeting came. Fortunately, he did offer or said that he would be interested in it. Would we be interested? I said no, but obviously knew that would string on things. We would end up with a better deal. So it worked out quite well.
That's brilliant. I'll tell you what, I don't think I would have had, not the guts to do it, but I think I'd have been so excited about that opportunity that I probably wouldn't have thought it through, and I would have been like living just gone, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. But to take a moment, pause, and actually think about it from a business perspective, hats off to you. Well done. And then was it Steve that came in who assisted you getting into retail and things like that? Because in flannels and a few other businesses.
So that was a huge part of it. There is definitely weight in having someone with so much experience. So when you're going to those meetings, they understand maybe how you need to play out the brand. But yeah, retail's it is a big channel, and particularly for jewelry. So most sales of jewelry are done in physical retail. So people want to see it, they want to feel the quality. So what we're doing is a bit, say, unique in the market, with most of our, 99% of our sales coming from D2C. So that was part of our strategy, and it is actually built into our financial year actually starts in 2 weeks' time on the 1st of September. So it definitely is built into that. But having someone of that credibility, it helps open doors.
Yeah, for sure.
Massively. We've had fortunately a lot of doors opened, and I was always against the idea of, say, giving away equity and giving away all of these things. But it's crazy how you can move so much faster just with knowledge. So even if he wasn't able to open the doors, the knowledge we've been able to learn has been worth its weight. And it's this saying, like, you need skin in the game to really care about something, don't you?
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. Once, like you say, you have skin in the game and you're very much invested at that point. You really want what's best for whether it be a brand or a business or whoever kind of you're working with. So yeah, skin in the game I think is really important. It's what we try and do with our employees is kind of get them on performance and things like that, or incentivize them, because it makes a massive difference.
There's a good Charlie Munger quote there. It's like, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
It's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And if I think back to when I was working, I always felt kind of underappreciated, or my salary didn't match the hours I was putting in. So I'm always kind of very mindful of that. But same thing, I guess, when it comes to someone investing in the business, and clearly that's worked wonders for you guys. No doubt in a few years' time, I think you'll be in his position, probably advising some other people. Would you like to do something like that? Is that the goal?
No, to be honest, I'm all in on D.Louise. I think like there's an interesting mindset I have with it, and definitely as you sort of go through business, you have to have multiple failures. But like probably like yourself, like many people, you constantly have opportunities arise that this influencer knows you'll maybe have some knowledge in terms of building a brand, so they approach you and say, would you want to do this? And the way I'm trying to view it, and it's similar to, it's actually Warren Buffett, but he talks about it with investing. So he did an incredible talk to a university in the US, and he said, if you treated investing as if you've got a scorecard, so a little scorecard, and you can only punch 10 holes in your whole life, how his investing approach is to pick, and when you pick and when you believe something, really go heavy. And that's the way I'm sort of trying to treat business, in terms of I know the real success comes when you compound significantly at one thing. So, and when I think of whether I'm, say, 80 years old, and when I look back, I don't admire the person, if you relate it to sport, who's quite good at tennis, played a bit of golf, likes all these little things. I admire the person who's really incredible at their one craft.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, say, at least from a jewelry point of view, really trying to double down on that, and really trying to nail my knowledge in the industry and scaling that sort of business.
Yeah, it makes sense. I always think back to this diagram, maybe you've seen it, and it's two circles. One's the circle pushing out in all directions with lots of little different arrows, and then there's one where it's just focused, and it's where the arrow obviously goes the furthest. And I'm always mindful of that, not to kind of spread yourself too thin, or even just if you really want to talk about it on like a daily basis, like decision fatigue and having to answer so many DMs, emails across multiple different brands. I can imagine if you were, on a board for many different businesses, there's probably a lot of decisions that you need to make and to consider, and you're jumping in and out of things. It would be very difficult to then scale D.Louise at the same time. Yeah,
100%. It was my biggest downfall, and I knew it was for years, is that I was spreading myself thin. I don't think I lacked ability, or maybe knew where I needed skill set, but when you're spreading yourself thin, you can get quite good at everything, but you can't really take things to the next level. And fortunately, D.Louise is a vehicle which aligns with, say, my ambitions in business and in life, that I can take it, and the scale we can take the business is almost unlimited. So it seems stupid to jump into another opportunity.
Yeah. It's good that you've made your decision up on that, and it's probably just any kind of opportunities that come in, you're very kind of tunnel vision, which is good. Otherwise, it's very easy to always think the grass looks greener and all these opportunities come along.
Yeah, it was like what we were talking about briefly before we started filming. And in my opinion, when I speak to people who've had real success, it takes them a decade. It takes them a decade to really build something which is, yes, you can hit luck or strike luck and have huge success and catch wind. But I think to build something which is stable, which maybe can operate without yourself, which has a wider team, which is a real good flywheel, which has a good customer base, or whatever sort of product or business you're in, it takes 10 years to build something incredible.
It can be really difficult to stay in that one vehicle. I think easier for you because of the success you've had and very quickly. But what I mean is, if you are in one particular vehicle and you may be there year 1, year 2, and you are gaining some momentum, but you see other people shooting fast in other vehicles. I know I've had it myself where you start to think, oh, am I in the right vehicle? Is this the right thing to be doing? Do I keep doubling down on where I'm at, or do I kind of dabble in other things? And I think if you see the success and you believe in what you're doing and you start building the momentum, it's a bit easier to stay with it. But I know I've struggled with it, just looking at what everyone else is doing and how fast they're moving.
It's a balance, and it's something I've put thought into in the past. But I think there's, like, if you speak to a lot of successful people, looking at like a wider pool, if you say to them, how many failed businesses have you had? Very rarely is someone not like their first business was a success. Very rarely. So I think if we were going to make an estimate, I would estimate that they've had average 5, let's call it, let's round it to 5. So they've had 5 failures, or what the people would consider failures. They probably learned huge lessons before they found, say, a vehicle which suited them, which suited their purpose, which suited the passion, all of these things before they had success. So there's a balance, isn't there? Because you need to, if you're going to say 5, like I know for me, like I started businesses when I was young, and I had probably definitely more than 5 failures. But you just have to get those out of your system and then sort of go on in your development. Obviously, there are exceptions. There are people who maybe had 20 failures and then their 21st is a success, or there ultimately are people who their first business they catch on to is just a huge success. And then there's the Elon Musk of the world who are just levels and levels above, are like uncomparable.
Another level.
Yeah.
It's very true. And failures, like you said, are never really a failure as long as you actually learn from it and you keep going. But the more I speak to successful people, the more I see that more often than not, they've lost everything multiple times and yet continued going, either in the same vehicle or something slightly different, and ultimately made it in the end. So I think it's all part of it, that resilience to, I always describe it as like a snakes and ladders analogy. Like, you know, you're working your way up that ladder and then you hit a snake and it's like, no, you don't quite deserve it yet. And you back down, you got to work your way back up. That's how it feels sometimes, being an entrepreneur, but all fun and games.
No, 100%. That's a great analogy.
So when it comes to scaling D.Louise, you know, you've had fantastic growth over just this past 3 years. What are you finding is working well right now in ecom? I know you're big on ICP. I know you're big on data, understanding your customer profile. You know, I see you're advertising on Meta. You're doing stuff on Google as well. Those are obviously the paid advertising channels. But is there anything you see as working really well for you guys at the moment?
Yeah, I'll try hopefully give maybe some things which people haven't heard, because I'm sure there's the normal, which is try spenders. But I think that there's a few things. I think the lesson which I've learned, particularly in the last 12 months, is like the product is king, and you're not putting, people don't put enough weight into that. And I think if you can buy your product and understand your market or your competitors and truly say that you believe that yours is the best offering in the market, I think in the long run, you'll come out on top. And I think people do put a lot of emphasis in, and we still do, in terms of like paid acquisition, in terms of how we're running ads, how we're producing ads, how we're trying to get cost advantages by we can produce X amount of ads for only X amount of price and we can maintain quality. You can play that game. But ultimately, if your product isn't best in class, you're fighting against the wind. You're sailing against the wind. And I'm sure you have, being in the agency space, you have people come to you and they'll say, well, scale the business. And then you understand that just from looking at it, well, I don't think your value to price makes sense. Like the competition is here. They don't understand the market well enough. And running ads doesn't help. It just gives you fuel to your fire.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest lesson. We've made some critical hires around that from knowing that. I think one good question we always ask ourselves internally is, first of all, for myself is, and this triggered actually the meeting with Steve, is what skills do I need to get to take the business to the next level? And then after that is, what skills do the team need to develop, or do we need to hire for to take the business to the next level? So I think we try ask ourselves those questions. And then it's also one thing which we're very big on and keen on is, if you look at a lot of the biggest businesses in the world, they're very clear on what their competitive advantage is in the market. So we strive ourselves on customer service, we strive ourselves on product quality. We also probably have an advantage being founder-led, and that seems to be what the market almost likes and craves. But it's being very clear of not what are our USPs and what all these other things, but what is our clear advantage? Where are we going to be? So we have next day delivery up until 8 p.m. You could buy an engraving piece at 7:58 and it'll be with you in the morning, which is the best in class. We're trying to surprise. And if you look at read any of, say, Amazon shareholder letters when that was being built, you can see they wanted a nail operationally. They wanted to be the most customer-centric business in the world. And where they were so clear on their strategy, they knew that if they executed against that, and what I see just when I'm speaking to brands is they're just in the market and they're trying to be cool, or they're trying to win on content, whereas that's a very competitive game. So it's difficult. It's difficult, but I think knowing what your competitive advantage is a massive advantage.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess really identifying what your competition are doing and where you fit into the market, and then doubling down on your strengths and truly having conviction in the product that you're selling.
100%. Because you see it all the time, but like we could try compete on price, and we want to be the best price. We could price everything extremely affordable. That's just, in my opinion, a race to the bottom. Do you know what I mean? It's who can be the cheapest, and Shein and Temu, and if we played that game, would have wiped us out anyway. So it gets more difficult.
For sure. Yeah. So really, really important there, doubling down on the product and making sure you have good product market fit. I think the people I've spoken to recently on the podcast have all been very successful in their own right, and you too. And it all starts, or it seems to start, with the ICP and the product, and really developing a good product market fit and scaling up from there. And I think if you can nail that, I think that's then what takes you from the 6-figure months to the 7-figure months, and really takes it beyond. Obviously as well, systems, internal processes and teams, but at its core, you need a good product. And then I guess, not to say it's easy to market a good product, but it becomes easier because you have product market fit, right? I would assume. And
then also it looks over time. There's something really interesting online about looking at some of the biggest brands in the world. So the Lululemons, the Nikes. If you look at their return customer revenue over year, I think that some of the data is estimated, but ultimately they're just stacking customers every single year. So they're getting new customers who are buying into the brand, but then ultimately they're staying with the brand. So their customer acquisition in terms of new customers is steady, but their return customer revenue is just growing year over year. And that only comes with a good product. If you're delivering people crap, they're not going to buy from you again. And people talk about it, like, especially in the Ecom space, like I meet with people in the space, and they're looking so detailed into data, and if we acquire people in or October, that cohort's more likely to have LTV. And I say, like, the biggest mover in LTV is a good product. Like, how many times have you received something and you're like, this is crap, I'm never going to buy from this brand again. So it is obviously important to look at the intricacies, but it's always starting at that core.
For sure, at the product. And then is there anything else you would do to kind of encourage or maximize that customer lifetime value and kind of get people coming back? Obviously, I understand once you've acquired the customer, you then have access to their data, emails, phone numbers and things like that. Is there any sort of tips or tricks you would use to get them coming back and spending again, aside from just a good product?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One thing which brands are executing really well on is that community play. Like in the UK Pure Sport, like their competitive advantage is clear. Like they've built such an incredible community, whether that's run clubs all across the UK, however they're doing it. So there are ways you can try and engage, and you can try to take people on that journey. That's what we're leaning into. It's that founder-led, Liv definitely being the face of the brand and trying to take people on that journey of the brand growing, so they can look at what pieces do our customers want, and once we know what they want, then it's designing with them. So then when it comes to purchasing it, they almost feel like they've designed it, and they always feel like they had input in the progress. So I think that's definitely important, and you see that at a bigger level. Like, I'm sure you've gone into men's shops trying to buy men's clothes, and like, why is this in there? It's because they start maybe to lose concept of who their customer is. It definitely gets more difficult as you scale, but I think it's trying to stay true to that.
Yeah, remembering, I guess, who you are and what you stand for.
Exactly.
And again, who your customer profile is to continue to appeal to them. I guess if it's built around a personality that is Liv, it, like you said at the start, it's easier to be yourself to attract people that are just like you, that like the journey and like you as a person. I think it's something you said as well. People don't buy from brands anymore. They buy from faces or something along those lines, which is really, really true. I mean, you see it in the e-com space, but also in the agency space. The brands that are doing the best are the ones that have a very strong personal brand at its core, a bit similar to what you're doing at D.Louise with Olivia being, front-facing and founder-led. So do you have any thoughts on why that transition has happened? Like, why it's come, why we've come away from logos to now being faces?
Yeah, I think it's social media's gone on an interesting ride, and it's something we talk about. What I talk about, particularly because I'm obsessed with it. And I'll ask you the question first, and we can carry on. But it's like, do you think in 5 years' time people are going to be on social media more or less? And I'm not sure of the answer, but do you think people are going to be on Instagram even more? They're going to spend more time on their phones or less? Say our age group, so we can.
I'd like to think less, but you see you see the way things are going with like younger generations just glued to it, or like, I was on the train here and everyone's just sat like that. And I get it, there's nothing else to do. What are you going to do on a train other than read a book or something like that? It's just a passing of time, but it's an addictive passing of time. You only need to get your phone out to reply to a text to then find yourself on Instagram. It's like, hang on a minute, I've ended up on here. So I think the answer is probably yes, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, it's interesting, and I think it will evolve in terms of that we're actually spending less time on the platforms, but more trying to engage more with the content we are consuming, as opposed to being very widespread. And I think the platforms are starting to optimize for that. But yeah, it's an interesting. So I think our play on it is ultimately that if Olivia can be the face of the brand and take people on the journey of the brand and show people crave that behind the scenes and understanding the story. And again, it's our competitive advantage, at least at the minute, because Nike aren't going to take you on the same journey. Their production times are probably massive, and their infrastructure to build that is very difficult. And they have a compliance team saying, "Can we post this on Instagram?" And all of these things which we understand. So we know that we can have speed and we can have agility and work towards that. And I get it. Like, do you know what I mean? That might not work in 10, 20 years time, but I think people are becoming more conscious of their social media use. I don't know about you, but 5, 10 years ago, the cool guy was the guy in the club drinking loads of champagne, spending too much money. Whereas now it's probably the person who's getting up early and going to the gym. And I think there's that people are becoming more self-aware. Hopefully the situation can't get much worse, but you're right. The amount of content people consume is out of this world.
It has massive benefits in some senses, like you say, in the type of content you're indulging in. Like if you think about podcasts or education or maybe learning something on YouTube about ecom, there is so much available knowledge, which really, if you want to dive into it, is just fantastic. All these courses are great because it's a condensed knowledge all in one place, and they can take you through like an A to Z of how to do something if it's a good course. But you do have so much at your disposal. There's so many people giving out so much free value. I mean, like Alex Hormozy comes to mind, where just every day you're getting something that resonates and it's valuable. So in some senses, if you're selective with who you follow, you can learn a lot. But I'm always, often I'll kind of go through who I'm following and think, well, am I still following this person? And I'll kind of have a bit of a cleanup. Same with my email subscriber list. To get so much junk, I'm just like, try and keep it very targeted on like what I'm doing and what I'm working towards.
It's interesting. There's this... ultimately, what's happened to our generation and people who are spending a lot of time on platform is it's cognitive information overload. So they're consuming too much. So if you think 100 years ago, how information was passed, say from one generation to another, was books, and those books are still around today. So that if I wanted to learn a lesson from someone, is they would write it all down or get it printed in a book, and then I would read it. Now what's happened is information is just thrown at us far too much. And I've gone through. I'm the guy, I'm always listening to a podcast, always, but I've what I've tried to do, which has worked massively well for me and might work well for you or any listeners, is just decide on, right, who do I want to, what is the bottleneck in my life, or what am I interested in learning, or what is the bottleneck in the business? Try understand what topic that is, try understand who I think is an authoritative figure in that space, and then only consume that content. Say if it's a podcast, I'll only consume that podcast for 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
That's all I consume. I make notes on it. I constantly listen to the point where I'm like, I know this podcast in and out, and I know I've taken every single point from it. And then once I've made notes and try to understand it, hopefully in some depth, then I'll move on to the next piece of content. And I sort of set that rule for myself, because otherwise you end up like, you're jumping from, your brain can't, it is a scientific thing. Your brain can't take that much information.
It does more harm than good. I noticed a similar thing, and probably about a year or so ago, or maybe a bit longer, there would be times where I would just not consume any content, because I'm like, I know what I need to do. This is my strategy. This is my plan. I'm going to build this out, let it run, gather some data, and while it's running, I'll indulge in some more content. So I've been very selective of that as well. And recently, just this week, actually, I started journaling. So many people keep asking me, do you journal? Do you journal? And like high-level people, and they're all just like, I don't know if you journal as well.
No,
but
I do. I'm massively into it.
Massive advocates. So this past week, I started on Sunday. I've been journaling, and whilst doing it, I've also been listening to a book called Life Leverage. I don't know if you've ever listened to it, but it's about being efficient with your time and outsourcing, automating, building systems as and when you need to, and truly understanding what your time is worth. So as a business owner, you can focus on the high ROI tasks. So my journaling session, if you like, in the morning has just been 5-10 minutes with a coffee, outlining, what my long-term goals are and how my daily tasks align with those goals. And if there's any tasks below what I believe to be a certain monetary value per hour, then to offload them to someone else or to outsource them. And he teaches 4 do's in the book. So you will look at a task and it's either do, delegate, defer, or delete, or something like that. And so you're kind of looking at it in that way.
Delete first, and if you can't delete it,
So that's what I've been doing in my journaling session. I guess everyone uses it in slightly different ways, but going back to your question, or it's not your question, sorry, but what you said, I'm also being selective. I realize I want to work on systemizing and efficiency. So I'm listening to a book on that, or have done, dipped in and out of the audiobook. And then I'm also making sure that I'm now journaling to keep myself accountable with regards to what my long-term goals are. So completely agree with that. And then where I'm building the school community at the moment, I've been meaning to listen to Russell Bronson's Expert Secrets, which is about building funnels and getting people in. So I think I'm taking a similar approach to you as well.
Hi guys, it's Theo. I hope you've picked up some valuable insights to apply to your business. If you're still here, our analytics suggest you're in one of 2 categories. 1, you're a business owner looking for new insights to scale your operations. 2, you're an agency owner looking to deliver more and charge more for your clients. We've helped clients like you achieve incredible results like this, and this, and this in the last 12 months alone. When I'm not here in the podcast room, I'm delivering on my Google Ads agency with my business partner Joe, driving millions in profitable sales by improving Google Ads as a powerful sales channel for your business. I won't keep you for long, but if you've enjoyed our free content, then imagine how much value you'd get inside our closed community of exclusive content where we teach proven strategies to scale e-commerce businesses using step-by-step frameworks, and weekly coaching calls in a community full of entrepreneurs. Check the link in the video description now for more info. All right, now back to the podcast.
It seems to be the best approach I've found. And in terms of the journaling, I think I've worked with a lot of, say, mindset coaches, people who understand the brain, and every single one, they start with self-reflection. So the most successful are the most self-aware. So all that journaling does typically is makes you self-aware of your actions, which are either going to take or have taken, and then puts you back on course. Because otherwise, say previously, a week, a month, a year could go by, and you're not aware of what you've done. Does it even align with what your goals are? So it just keeps that level of accountability for awareness.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know why it's taken me so long to do it. Even my business partner for years has been telling me I should journal. I don't know. Sometimes you know what you need to do and you just, I don't know, you just don't get into it. It's very strange, but too many people have said it to me now for me to ignore it any longer. And
it'll be a habit soon.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. I've been doing it, like I say, it's only been about 4 or 5 days now, but I have found it helpful. And do you start the day doing the same thing, or maybe end the day journaling?
I'm a bit of people know me, I'm a bit of a freak for all these things, and I don't talk about them publicly too much, but I'm happy to. the morning I'm big into just having a morning routine, but that's nothing crazy. It's just like get up, hit coffee, and then go to the gym. And I try to do some form of exercise, which is actually just going to try and give me energy for the day. I am big into affirmation. So there's something like someone I've worked very closely with, a guy called Dr. Ken West, but he wrote the sports performance program at Harvard and Oxford. He extremely understands like the human brain. And part of, like, say, visualization and all these things is Tiger Woods had the best quote for it. And it was, to be clear is when you can describe your future in as much as you can describe present reality. So it's like, can I understand of hopefully where I'm going to be, who I'm going to become, and how I'm going to act? So I've actually recorded myself of these things, the person I want to be and the person I hopefully am. And I just try to listen to that in the morning, and then evenings I journal. Yeah. So it's just trying to keep those habits, but they keep you in check. Like if you observe anyone who's achieved massive success, it might not be journaling and it might not be these things, but they do have similar habits. But on visualization, like, people can ignore it and say it's woo-woo, but look at, do you know what I mean? I could list off a name of 20, 30, 40, 50 successful people who all practice visualization of some sort.
Yeah, for sure. I actually do the same thing. Have you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
He speaks of his mind movies. Oh, they're not his, but he speaks about it in his book, Becoming Supernatural. And I've built one, so I watch it every morning and evening. Is it similar to what you're saying?
Yeah, similar.
So yeah, I have one, and I regularly update it because it all slowly comes true.
100%.
So like I built one initially, I don't remember when I started, maybe like 5 months ago. And I've adjusted it multiple times, either because I've achieved the goal or what I'm trying to achieve is now bigger than what I initially set and things like that.
No, even like where I live, the car I will drive, everything. I sort of, you go through that first phase, but it was probably when I was early 20s when I achieved those goals, and those were the goals I always pushed towards. And then you're like, shit, this is a bit crazy. Yeah. What next? And then you obviously keep pushing the bar.
For sure. You know, the guest I had on my podcast most recently, his name's Defino, young guy, and he's just bought a Bentley Mansouri in Dubai. And he said every single Saturday, I don't know for how long, but maybe like years, he visited a car dealership showroom every Saturday.
Yeah.
Every Saturday to see the cars, to touch them, to sit in them, to put his hands on the steering wheel. I don't know how they kept letting him in, but
Jim Carrey's the good one. You can read about him. He basically wrote a check for $1 million. He had no money at the time, wrote a check for $1 million saying, one day I'll get paid $1 million to be in a movie. And true enough, it happened.
You have to believe it for it to happen. You have to have conviction in yourself. And referring back to what Dr. Joe Dispenza says, I don't know the exact terminology, but the way in which your brain thinks, a lot of people will focus on the past instead of the present, but you can essentially rewire your brain and start thinking forward, like you said, instead of thinking backwards. So you think these things enough, or tell yourself them enough, they eventually become your reality.
Yes. Now I say this to the team all the time, but there's someone with double the self-belief, half the intelligence, who's earning 4 times the amount of money as you. Yeah. So it's just self-belief should never be the bottleneck for your growth. And if you observe, there's another good quote. It's like, Kobe-like work ethic, and then Kanye-like self-belief. And it's just that, if you've ever seen that Kanye West documentary on Netflix, he looks like almost just a college school kid. Yeah. And he's got the self-belief that he is going to do everything which he did achieve in the music industry.
Yeah, it really is a thing. Manifesting is a thing, but also self-belief and conviction. Even like what you said earlier about conviction with the brand and the product. It's also extremely important. So that, but also just knowing where you're going and kind of applying that information, just changing the mindset as well. Like, visualize where you want to be, but make sure your mindset truly aligns with the things that you want. We spoke earlier about limiting beliefs briefly, and I didn't realize, but I definitely still had some kind of nagging there behind. And moving to Dubai allowed me to see things in a different way and to see how much of an abundance of things people have out there, that it makes you realize what is possible, because you see so many people who you believe to be like yourself who are maybe further ahead on the journey, and all it is they believe in what they're capable of doing, and they've gone out and done it. And it's just, I would encourage anyone actually, coming from like a small seaside town myself and spending most of my life there, to just get into a city, a bit like London or even abroad, and just expose yourself to different cultures and different environments. Depending on what your goals may or may not be, would probably differ where you want to go. But for me, Dubai has been a game changer mentally. I feel like I've grown very, very fast there compared to what I was here in the UK. And I wonder if I would even be the person I am today had I not spent the last 8 months there, you know?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. The human brain is designed that it needs to see things to believe it. So I could say to you, we go out of this studio and there's a bright pink house and it's got 11 bedrooms and there's a slide coming from the front and Chris Brown's performing on the top. Whereas you might not believe me and you have no reason to believe me. Yeah. But if you went outside and saw it, you then believe it and you would act in accordance with that. And you would, and it's the exact same with, say, someone building a business to a certain level, or people telling you you need to see it and hear it yourself, like from firsthand, or see the monetary wealth which they've had, or the success, or anything like that, to believe that it's even possible.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's interesting.
It's like the man that ran 100 meters and broke the world record, right? And then ever since then, it's just got beaten again and again, and it just keeps getting quicker because you show people what's truly possible.
100%.
Same with
the 4-minute mile.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Was,
Sorry, not 100 meters, the 4-minute mile. But it's crazy. When you see what's possible or what other people can do, you start to shift your reality as to like, well, why can't I do that? And it's just that belief in yourself that it is possible that allows you to then work towards it. But pair that with manifestation, and not just like manifesting and not taking action, but then aligning your tasks or your daily actions with your long-term goals. It's almost like inevitable.
Yeah.
I feel like sooner or later, everyone's on a slightly different journey or different trajectory, but you will get there eventually.
100%.
I think just knowing that is it's a game changer.
No, I couldn't agree with everything you said there. It's bang on.
For sure. So we drifted a little bit away from D.Louise, but it's been really interesting stuff just about entrepreneurship and life in general, which is really nice to hear. Taking it back just onto D.Louise, what are the long-term goals then? I know you mentioned this is kind of your vision. You don't have to share like monetary figures, but or even if it is a bit personal, you don't have to. But
I'm happy to.
Where's the brand going? What's the vision?
Yeah. So our mission statement is to be the global leader in our markets. That's how we start our mission statement. So we're not looking to build something which is small. I have huge admiration for businesses such as Pandora's, the Swarovskis, and if you look at those, they took Pandora, for example. It took 40 years. Well, its first 10 years, nothing really happened. You know what I mean? So we're definitely on a growth trajectory. So we try to compare ourselves to those sort of businesses, whilst we are definitely in an infancy compared to many businesses in the market. So we view this with a hugely long time horizon, something I think about more than I should, but I'm at the age now where you start thinking about having kids and start thinking about that journey, and definitely my kids will not be spoiled. So I then have to balance this, that I would like to have huge success in business because of potentially the person I'll have to become to have that success. But then equally, I don't want to pass that, give them a silver spoon. But I do admire businesses. Swarovski's the perfect example. There are many others, but they're just in the industry where the whole family, so people, they have the option that they can join it as a family business. They have the Swarovski surname, so obviously they probably do get some slightly different treatment naturally by employees, but they still have to work for their positions in the business. So I think when I try to think about that, there's something I know that if I was brought up in a way that I always had to work hard, I always had to be respectful, and nothing was ever given to me. And I know that if I can bring my kids up in a way, but they give them potentially an opportunity that they can build, say, a legacy within the D.Louise, hopefully what will be an even bigger business. I think that's a great opportunity to give someone, should they want to take it. So we try to think with a massive time horizon. We're not looking to sell the business. I'm actually, I think, taking on, say, a private equity wants to be in and out in 3 to 5 years, brings on unnecessary risk. And ultimately, I'm not looking to do this for an exit. So I think with that mindset, you become, it's also an advantage in the market because you see so many businesses where they're constantly changing, they're getting new boards, they're getting new control. It becomes, it's a difficult game because ultimately private equity are investing into multiple businesses within that fund, and then they're hoping a few are going to blow in terms of scale massively, but a lot will crash. And I refuse to let something like that happen to D.Louise. But it's not to say all raising money is a bad thing all the time.
Yeah, and your business was actually pretty much bootstrapped by you, right? Because Olivia gave up work during COVID, and then I think, did you say you would pay her salary, but she has to kind of work towards something or build something?
So I fortunately had another business at the time, so I could invest into D.Louise. So we've, when Steve invested into the business, it wasn't for that we needed capital for anything. It was basically like, if you're going to want to share this pie, I want something. At least put your money where your mouth is, and what he did.
So even just on that note, like to be able to have built the brand to what it is today within 3 years, and know that you didn't get any equity from anyone else, or it wasn't funded initially anyway, to get the ball rolling is amazing. And it's very exciting to hear the long-term vision of the company.
There's also big risk with, you see it all the time, but Allbirds is the classic example now, where they were a D2C brand and they scaled and then they IPO'd, and it's all come crashing down. So I think like a good business, in my opinion, should make profitably from day one. Obviously, there are exceptions, like if you're trying to be what Amazon was to the e-commerce space and you're like, we need to get market share. But more than not, I speak to, say, business owners and they'll flaunt about revenue figures, but then they're negative EBITDA and they're trying to be profitable, but they're sort of pretending like they're not. But ultimately, well, especially in today's market, interest rates are high. It's hard to borrow money. It's hard to raise. We want to scale profitably. Like predictable, profitable growth is one of our mantras.
Yeah, I like that. Predictable, profitable growth. Profitable being the key word there, because a lot of people will throw money into things to scale, but when it comes to the end of the year, or when you're reviewing finances, you see how much expenses you have and how little is actually left. You end up not saying everyone does this, but a lot of business end up chasing revenue to get turnover, to then look at the bottom line profit and then wonder where it's all gone. So it's a balancing act. But I'd imagine by now you've got a lot of help when it comes to cash flow and finances, and got people monitoring that kind of thing.
We've fortunately got so part of Steve's team is a guy called Philip Dorr, who was the CFO at Gymshark. I don't know if you've ever seen that Twitter thread about the Gymshark cash conversion cycle. So they were basically had an incredible cash conversion cycle, which is effectively how they turn cash into profits into cash. So he's involved with our business. So I've obviously learned tremendous amounts from him just about how important cash is in the business, and learning all these lessons. Because obviously when you're young and naive, you're like, well, just put it all into stock, or you start making irrational decisions. But it's learning that. It's obviously looking at like interesting like trade facilities, terms of suppliers, how you can move lower bad selling stock. So it's a huge amount of lessons there. But that's our biggest risk as a stock-based business, as an e-commerce business, is your stock. Stock can kill you. It's what's happened to so many bigger brands, and ASOS, for example, that's where they're struggling at the minute, because they just bought too much stock, and obviously COVID was a big boom and the growth slowed. Yeah,
for sure. I think the most important thing I've probably pulled from this podcast and your journey, you've shared a lot of valuable stuff there, but it's just investing in knowledge, and the right knowledge to get ahead. And you were very good to identify that early. Like, I want to take this brand to massive heights, but I don't personally know how to do that. How can I find someone that can help me do that? And then leverage their knowledge to not make mistakes, or make much fewer mistakes, I'd imagine, than if you tried to scale it yourself. Because that is the thing. Your business has grown very, very quickly. You didn't start that business as like an expert in finance, or, scaling to million dollar months. So investing in someone that's already done that to help you on that journey, I think is really, really important. I think that's probably what I think most people could probably take away from here. And it's something that I've learned recently as well, is don't be afraid to invest money into knowledge, or into building teams and systems and hiring the right people. Something, again, that Defino said on the podcast last week was, if you hire the right people, their salary will essentially pay themselves.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
So it's not even necessarily always a risk, so long as you're investing in the right people.
All businesses it's a capital allocation game. So it's where should you allocate the business's money to hopefully get a bigger and better return, and people is that best. But you go through that awkward stage where at the beginning you can't afford skilled people, in all honesty, because of their salary expectations, or people who've got experience doing what you're going to do. And then you go through this phase where, so at that point, you're hiring family and whoever can just muck in and get the job done. And then as your business grows, unfortunately, either those people can hopefully come on the journey with you, but more than often than not, that they can't. So you have to start investing in people who've been there and done it, and hopefully got wider experience. And that's where we've learned. But something I did identify and definitely got taught to me is that if I look at people who say where I want to be or more successful, it wasn't that they were massively more intelligent. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, definitely not. But I still think I had the ability to get to their knowledge level. So it was just that they knew more and they acted faster. So it's just trying to extract that information and obviously apply it.
Yeah, I think if you know the right direction to go in and you can learn from people before you, or like you said, from books, even if you don't have the money to invest in the right people, books aren't ever really that expensive. And more often than not, they have all the answers if you know where to look.
Yeah.
So if you can get the right information and apply it and act quickly, I think speed, massively important, and clearly something you've acted on very well to achieve what you have done in 3 years. But yeah, it's very, very admirable what you've achieved. And I think hopefully people can take a lot from you and your journey. Have you got maybe any finishing thoughts that you'd like to share with people? It could be anything.
No, I think just on the books, just because you just mentioned it, one thing which I've obsessed over and I still do is reading biographies. So I think they're incredible things where people have probably got to the end of their life and your goal. So you think of, say, hopefully both of us in our late 80s, 90s, all you're trying to do when you're writing that book is how can I give as much knowledge and value in this as possible to hand over to the next generation. And I think that's what's been done on so many times. So I obsess over reading biographies of people who've sort of been there and been on a journey. And the classic one, which we get into, is say like a shoe dog, where it's about the founder of Nike, and he reflects at the end where maybe he didn't spend enough time with his family on the journey, and he made those sacrifices which he regrets. So I think there's people spend too much time trying to learn like what is the new thing, as opposed to observing people who've probably been and done what they've done. And you see the same things amongst all of them. Like every successful founder is relentless. They've got that trait. So then once you know that's a trait, I need to develop. How do I do it and how do I apply it? But have you ever been to relentless.com?
No.
So it redirects you to Amazon. So that's what Jeff Bezos was going to call Amazon. So that's one of his sort of mantras. So he still owns that domain, and it just redirects you direct to Amazon. So it's a little gem. Have a play around after, but it's something you wouldn't think, but it shows the type of person he was.
For some reason, I was thinking the energy drink, like relentless energy drink.
But he still owns that domain and sends you to Amazon.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to check that out. Well, Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate
you shared a lot of gems. Really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, I highly recommend everyone go and check out D.Louise, a fantastic female jewellery brand. And where can they find you, Jack? I know you're on socials as well, Instagram, Twitter and things like that.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm not massively active, but if I can help anyone in any way, I will. Try keep a small circle of people, but I've got a good group who we all learn off and try to spread some knowledge. Definitely a journey for everyone to join. We're not trying to hold everything behind keep information to ourselves.
For sure. No, I think you shared a lot on this podcast. I've definitely learned a lot and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.